Hello, everybody. This is Gary Gomes talking to you about Vedic Astrology from the great beyond, from New Bedford, Massachusetts. I'll show you my face. My phone number, my contact information is 508-525-0001. You can send me a text on that, or you can email me at garygomesg@gmail.com. That's the easiest email to remember. So it's 508-525-0001 or garygomesg@gmail.com. GARYGOMES@gmail.com. All right. My name is Gary Gomes. I've been a practicing Vedic astrologer for over 30 years now. And I've also been priest of the Temple of Kriya Yoga, or Swami of the Temple of Kriya Yoga since 1995, 1996. I'm a former president of the Council of Vedic Astrology, an international organization devoted to the propagation of Vedic astrology as a divination system. It's an old system. It originated in India, and it became called Vedic astrology mainly because of the urgings of individuals like Chakrapani Lal and Dr. David Frawley, who essentially tied it back to the teachings of the Vedas, which are the foundation of the Hindu religion system called the Sanatana Dharma. So this is considered by many Indians and by many Westerners to be an extremely old system. Many Indians dated back to around 5,000 years ago. Some individuals are far more conservative and believe it was derived from Greek astrology when Alexander and other individuals visited India. It's the dispute that the origins are really not that important, to be honest with you. There are some distinct differences from Western astrology in that it uses what's called a sidereal or a star-based zodiac. So if you're, let's say, a Western Aries, you may not be an Aries in Indian astrology or in Vedic astrology. And that's because Indian astrology uses a system called the Procession of the Equinoxes. And the Procession of the Equinoxes is based around the fact that the orientation of the Earth to the constellations changes slightly over centuries. So it's roughly 1 degree every 72 years. And right now, the two zodiacs, the tropical, which is used for seasonal, so it's when the Earth inclines towards the sun or moves, or the northern hemisphere inclines, or the southern hemisphere inclines towards the sun. That's set around March 23rd, and that date is still true, but the zodiac sign in the sky is not Aries, but Pisces, for the most part. If you were born after the 15th or the 16th of the month, chances are between the 15th and 16th to the 22nd, roughly, you'll retain your Western sun sign. If you were born before that, you're essentially the previous sign. So a person born in Leo, sun, if they were born before the 15th of August, their sun would be in Cancer. Now that doesn't present as many problems as you would think it would. And as a matter of fact, my interest in astrology goes back to when I was around 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. I actually had a school teacher friend who had a Linda Goodman sun sign book, and she let me borrow it a few times. And I think I actually bought it later on, if I recall correctly. And essentially, the tropical zodiac never made sense to me in terms of my individual chart, and astrology never really made sense to me until I had a reading from a Vedic astrologer. That was one of the reasons that I decided I would learn Vedic astrology, because it was just like spot on for me. For other individuals, Western astrology works extremely well for them, and I'm not saying that Western astrology is wrong, but in terms of my chart, it just seemed to work much better for me. I came to astrology indirectly through transcendental meditation. I am a TM initiate. I can teach meditation. I can teach a variety of special disciplines. I can do charts for you if you're interested in getting a chart done. I can also teach you one-on-one. I have opened an astrology school. I am working on an astrology book. It's coming out relatively soon. I'll have a lot more time after July to start to work on it, to complete it. And lots of exciting things coming up. There'll be more podcasts and broadcasts on this channel. This is part of a TV show that I do for New Bedford Cable Access, and I'm grateful to them for allowing me this opportunity. And I feel great today, despite the fact that we're right on the edge of an eclipse. There'll be an eclipse tomorrow night. So I'm going to actually talk a little bit more about the eclipse, because it really colors what's going on right now for people. And if I make a difference between what's happening today's Saturday, to Sunday, most of you really won't get this broadcast until the eclipse has occurred. And I think it'll actually be more beneficial to look at the eclipse chart than it will be to look at the regular weekly chart. So I'm going to see if I can share the screen. Thanks for staying with me so far. But like I said, stick with this channel. Please like, subscribe. I'm going to get better equipment. Like, subscribe. I'm waiting for my space to clear out. They're really close to getting the space done, but it'll probably be it probably won't be until July that I can actually start broadcasting from there. And again, what I'm talking about is not a big studio. I'm just talking about really a small room in my house that's being redone and will be converted into a studio. But basically, and it won't be a big elaborate studio. It'll be just something, not everybody really likes to look behind the curtain, but I kind of do. And so we'll have it set up properly, and we'll go to a more sophisticated presentation format than Zoom. Okay, so good things coming. Music channels coming up, and I have a strong love of music. I'll be talking to you more about that over the next few months. So again, like I said, a lot of good things coming up. So like, subscribe. I do need your support. I'm asking you for your support. And the more subscriptions I can get, the closer I can get towards monetizing the channel and making a little bit of money off this. Monetization doesn't provide a great deal of things, a great deal of money, but it would be helpful. And yeah, unless we get into like hundreds of thousands of subscribers, which would be wonderful, and that's the ultimate goal. But you build an audience, it takes a while. Okay. And I am planning having some additional guests down the road. Some people I haven't asked yet, so I can't say they're coming. But if I can't get the people that I want to agree to appear, I think you'll be very happy. There are actually some um, really impressive people. And again, I do hope to be doing some additional broadcasts with Lolita down at Roderbach, who's a good friend of mine and an excellent astrologer and a very spiritual lady, and also some other folks who you may already know from the astrological community. So fingers crossed I can get those on board. All right, so let's go to the chart. I can teach you other things too, besides in addition to astrology, like tarot and a variety of other things, but I'll end a self-advertisement for now and go back to this. All right, so let me see if I can pull this up. Okay, so this will be, I'm gonna block this out and I'm gonna stop the share and start it again because I don't trust this little guy, especially on the day before an eclipse, and there's a Mercury retrograde going on right now. So one of the things to keep in mind, so everybody has probably heard about Mercury retrogrades. They're not action stoppers, so you shouldn't be afraid. You should be cautious and read the fine print if you're signing a contract during Mercury retrograde. It's not necessarily a time when you can't move forward. If you want to be absolutely sure there are no miscommunications, then don't sign anything during Mercury retrograde. But usually contracts can be amended, misunderstandings can be walked back. It isn't the end of the world to start something on a Mercury retrograde. And one thing I learned from a Western astrologer, and I can't remember who it was, I wish I could, is that actually you get great bargains during Mercury retrograde. So I wouldn't buy anything technological, like I wouldn't buy a television set or a radio or a CD player or something like that during a Mercury retrograde. Something that was a communications device, a computer, let's say. But other items you certainly can buy. So you can get great deals on books, reading, writing. As my friend Lolita Donatella had indicated, are encouraged during Mercury retrograde. I knew a brilliant writer who had an exalted Mercury retrograde. She was just fantastic. She could write things right off the top of her head. They would come out perfect first draft. And again, her Mercury was exalted. That helps a lot. But the retrograde, that's sort of an introspective placement. So she actually had really good writing skills. And the other thing to keep in mind as you're looking at this is that eclipses are not really, in essence, bad things. They're things that reveal the truth to a certain extent. They're not lucky for starting new activities, although if you're into magic or into manifestation, they're actually good times to start manifestation exercises. Just be careful and phrase what you want exactly how you want it to happen, because it's a very powerful, eclipses are very powerful for manifesting desires. The thing that's really responsible for a lunar eclipse, which is what we're having tomorrow, and it's a full lunar eclipse in Scorpio, is very important not to be depressed, to meditate, to go inward, to do your spiritual work. If you want to do manifestation, or if you're into a tradition where you do rituals, it's a great time to do those activities, but just be very careful that it's always optimistically tinged or optimistically worded, because the moon is essentially at really one of its weakest points right now. Number one is eclipse. That's the most important thing. But number two, it's in a stabilization sign of Scorpio, and the moon is at its weakest point, really. So in terms of confidence, this will be great for some people. The sun's finally out of the same sign with Rahu. So we're out of Kala Sarpa Yoga. We were out of it actually for about the past few weeks because Mercury had moved past that point. But we're out of that combination where all the signs are jammed in between Ketu and Rahu. But the sun, which is essentially the lead planet in the chart, is now outside of it. So this cause for optimism. So a lot of people who felt like really low energy levels over the past couple of weeks will start to feel that go away very quickly. The other thing to keep in mind is during eclipses is that it's easy to get attached to what I would call lower goals. So I mean, so let's say I want to get $200 to pay this bill, or I want to get or I want to have so and so like me. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with those wishes, you may find yourself worrying too much or obsessing too much about negatives in your life. So the things you don't have versus the things you do have. And so that can make a person feel a little bit down, a little bit disappointed in life. And also, on the other hand, it can also give bad judgment. So the moon, so let's say if you're attracted to somebody, there's a danger that you'll act on impulse and try to rush a romance or rush a relationship when it's really not clear that it's the best idea for you. So again, no major decisions during this period. If it's something you've already decided on before, then you can meditate, then you can, send your desires. It's a clear pathway towards the fulfillment of desires. But again, it should be used judiciously. Meditation, doing good acts for other people, doing good things for other people, doing acts of charity for other people. These are all good things to do during eclipses. It's not so good to get greedy during eclipses, to be honest. So I think one of the things that I encourage you to do, especially tomorrow night, is if you can find something quiet to do, something meditative to do. Not a good night to party. Not a good night to invest in stocks. Not a good night to because Rahu's the strong planet here, and not a good time to apply for jobs you may not even be interested in. And also be careful about reputation during eclipses, because during a solar eclipse, a person's position can be knocked down. During a lunar eclipse, their reputation can be knocked down. So it's something you have to be very careful, not say too much, not engage in what I would call stupid conversations. And what I mean by that is, so I'm kind of blunt at times, but a stupid conversation would be something where you absolutely have to win the fight, and you're arguing with somebody whose mind is made up. It's a fruitless conversation. You ever seen a Chinese finger trap? It's sort of like that kind of a conversation where you can't get past the person's bias. So the more you argue, the more you try to get out, the more quickly you get drawn in. So good advice at any time, particularly good advice during an eclipse. And I have a stubborn chart, so I know those kind of arguments almost too well, so it's really, so I'm just telling you from experience, this eclipse is taking place in fixed signs. It's really easy to get stuck in a position and not and let it bother you and hold on to grudges. So not a good time to do that. So looking at the general chart, though, this is not a bad chart. Except for the eclipse, this is not a bad chart. The eclipse, one thing I would watch out for during the eclipse is making unnecessary purchases, because the eighth lord, especially from relationship partners, because the eighth lord is in the 12th house, and that's the moon. So there'll be these kinds of what I would call panic-driven purchases. The other thing is, in terms of the world overall, and Mars and Saturn is in conjunction, that's almost a stereotypical combination for letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. So essentially, this is kind of a picky combination. We want to move, we want to get energized. Jupiter and Venus are telling us it's okay to go ahead, it's okay to move fast because Venus is exalted and Jupiter's really happy too. So that's a good combination. As a matter of fact, Jupiter is aspecting the moon in this eclipse, so that's actually helpful. So it'll actually make things go a little bit more smoothly. But it's also not like I said, not a time to act rashly. The Jupiter-Venus conjunction, I have to give you some advice on this. You can take it or leave it. The Jupiter and Venus combination tends to make a person overly optimistic. They'll start to say, I can do anything. And while that's true, I actually believe that is true. There are obstacles you'll face, and some things will look far easier than they really are. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't do them, but essentially try not to underestimate the difficulty of the tasks you undertake. And so that's just a little bit of wisdom. Just make sure you're in it for the long term if you commit to an activity, because Venus will leave this sign in about 10 days, and it'll move into Aries, and we'll become more interested in starting relationships, even if they're bad relationships, for about another month. I hate to tell you guys that, but that's I'm just telling you what the chart shows. So no new relationships for about another 40 days if you can avoid it, and not every sign should be considering relationships during this period. But this is kind of an impulsive eclipse. It's Rahu's in Aries, Ketu is in the sign of Libra. Libra is a relationship sign. You'll be attracted to people who really either don't commit that well, or are strange, or have problems. So just take that as a little bit of a warning indicator. It'll be a little bit safer in the fall, although not between October 22nd and November 7th to do that, because we're going to have another eclipse in Libra and Aries. And I think one of the things that I probably encourage you to do is, for people who are investing, try not to panic. The investment markets have been down. Saturn also aspects. So not only Jupiter, but Saturn also aspects that 12th house. So a lot of people have been experiencing losses. That'll start to reverse after the eclipse has passed. But the effects of eclipses last for, at a minimum, 3 to 9 months, as long as 9 months. So you're going to see a lot of trading surprises over the next, I would say, over the next year or so. A lot of market disruptions because K2 is in Libra, which is a sign of markets. It's not the sign of high finance, but it is the sign connected most with markets, with trading things and in trading things of value. So Jupiter is well placed in this particular sign in Pisces. That's an excellent place for Jupiter. Venus will be moving, and you'll see markets improve, I would say, around when Saturn moves back into Capricorn, and also when Venus moves into Taurus. But you'll see even an end to what I would call the shock cycle that we're in right now in the economy. Inflation will persist, though, for about a year, at least another year. And that's mainly because, well, number one, the government is stubborn. Number two, and this is not a knock on any government. I just think most governments don't want to exceed right now. They don't want to adjust. They don't want to compromise right now. And that's in part because of Rahu being in Aries. It's in part because of the operating Mahadashas of major countries right now. And it's also in part due to fear of losing power, which Rahu and Aries can give. And K2 in Libra is sort of a non-cooperative arrangement. So it'll be interesting because you'll see all sorts of new artistic opportunities open up with K2 in Libra. You'll see all sorts of spiritual opportunities open up with K2 in Libra. That's terrific. So you're interested in those things, but government itself, a little bit more than a little bit restrictive. Like trying to hold on to power at all costs, pretty much. And it'll end up being futile, to be quite honest with you. So you're going to see a lot of changes, I think, in the fall in the United States, and even more changes around the world over the next few months. So that's pretty much the way I see it. The other thing is, just keep in mind, Mars is aspecting the Sun, so temperatures will be shorter than normal over the next month or so. And also Mars aspects Mercury. Be prepared for a longer period of government misrepresentation. And like I said, this is not only on one side. This is across the board. It's really unfortunate, and also media misrepresentation. My apologies. So I think it's interesting. We normally see truths come out during eclipses. This has been a period over the past couple of weeks, past couple of months, actually, where we've seen a lot of things that were said to be not happening, actually verified as actually happening. And that's true in all countries around the world, but especially in the United States. And you're going to see even more of that happen in the fall, in between. So the next eclipse cycle happens during our election cycle. So it'll start October 25th and it'll end November 7th, November 8th. So after the elections have occurred. So you'll see a lot of reversals, a lot of upsets, and and like I said, on both sides, this is just a really interesting time to look at life in the world. So let's look and see. So again, investments, be a little bit cautious. Be optimistic. I'm not saying you shouldn't be optimistic, but be cautious. And also, in terms of, so expect some losses over the next few days, and then, excuse me, I'm sorry, and then I would say a general recovery. Okay, but slow. All right, so let's go to the map chart. And I'm not going to talk about the Johnny Depp trial. I think, well, let me talk about it a little bit. I don't have either of their their charts. So essentially what you're going to see is Amber Heard will try to refute what Johnny said. That's basically what happened. Because it's Rahu, it's really, I'm going to betray my bias. It's really not truthful, but that'll happen nonetheless. And it'll probably be kind of, one astrologer said it'll be kind of explosive, and I think that individual's right. I think, I want to say it was Naomi Bennett, but I'm not sure. And so, and Naomi's a Western astrologer, but I agree with her. So let's go back to time and space changes. All right, so here we have, so these are the most important points when we're looking at this chart in terms of the in terms of the eclipse. So we have basically the sun and moon and Rahu all kind of together in California and through Nevada up through looks like Idaho and into Nebraska, right? So, and into Canada, into central Canada. So we can expect some governmental scandals in that part of the country, some unquiet. I know that California is undergoing whole series of problems right now, and even in terms of his own party attacking the leadership over the abortion Supreme Court abortion decision, which hasn't been made yet. Just the opinion has been leaked, and so this particular part of the country will be in for a bit of difficulty over not necessarily abortion, but over government misrepresentation. And there'll be a Mercury line running through Mexico into Texas and New Mexico and all the way up into Michigan. And I think you're also going to see media experience some embarrassments and out lie or prevaricate. It's my favorite word for lie. And there'll be a Mars Mercury line coming up right around Michigan, and it looks like North and South Dakota. So that part of the country, pay special attention to that part of the country about misrepresentation of facts, or even hearings being set up to prosecute government officials. Jupiter line is running through, it looks like Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, and I haven't forgotten about Hawaii. I'll get to that in a second. And but I think you'll also see, I just want to go back to California. You'll also see some potential for some earthquakes or some really bad weather in that part of the country. I hope not. But the Jupiter line runs up through Louisiana and all the way up into Michigan. So there'll be court action in that part of the country. And there's a Venus line running up through New York, which is great for me, because I'm a Venus person, but I think that'll also give inflationary pressure, so it's especially around New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, up into Montreal, Canada, and also down into South America, down into Chile, Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela. And again, we have kind of strong inflationary pressure over here near Hawaii. Okay, so again, and also supply side issues. Let's see where those are coming up. Supply side issues in Oregon, Washington, Western Canada, and also Brazil. Government scandals in Brazil, most definitely. And there's a Saturn line, so shortages connected with shortages. So somebody will be stealing and trying to cover it up in Brazil. Also, it's touching on Ireland and England a little bit. So there's a Mars line and a Jupiter line coming through England, France, and Spain, and Northern Africa, especially around Libya and Morocco, and let's see now, and down through into the tiny country of Gabon. And there's a Venus line giving inflationary pressure to Germany, Sweden, and Western Africa around Ghana, and down all the way down to South Africa. Finally, we have all these lines running through. So we're all aware that Finland and Sweden and I don't think are considering, Finland's definitely considering joining NATO, and Sweden's weighing it right now. But Finland is kind of out of the mix. There'll be some government controversy about whether or not Sweden should join. And unfortunately, this war will continue on. There's a Mercury Rahu line hitting in Eastern Europe. I'm hoping it won't spread. I'm hoping it won't spread to outside the Ukraine. And I want it to be over for the people in the Ukraine, but like I said, I don't think really for several months. The other thing is, you have these Rahu lines running through Turkey. So the eclipse will be in the middle of Turkey. So that could mean earthquake activity around Ankara, northern Turkey, and also some government scandals around Ankara, which is the capital of Turkey, and also government scandals around Saudi Arabia and down to Yemen. Okay, we also have a Saturn line hitting Saudi Arabia too, which isn't good for supply chain matters for them. There's a Mercury line running through and a Rahu line close to it, running up through Ukraine and Russia, that general shared territory. So we're going to be getting a lot of miscommunications from both sides about the war in Ukraine, not only from Russia, but also from Ukraine itself. So again, I'm not saying Russia is right. That's, so that make it absolutely clear. I'm not saying Russia is right, but we are hearing. So how can I say this? We're not getting balanced reporting. So Russia's clearly in the wrong. Okay, so I'm not saying, well, they were provoked. That's not really the idea. But we're not getting balanced reporting on what's happening in Ukraine versus, we're getting a certain form of propaganda. So I would liken it to the propaganda of World War I, in which the Germans were portrayed, and they were bad. They were very, very bad in World War I, but they were portrayed extremely negatively in order to convince the United States to get into the fray. I don't see the United States actually joining in the fight directly. This is, again, and I said this a few weeks ago, this is a proxy war. This is not really a war between the United States, between Ukraine and Russia. It's really a war between the West and Russia. But Ukraine is essentially in the way. And like I said, Russia, I think, is being paranoid. I said as much when I looked at Putin's chart a few weeks ago. I'm not excusing his behavior by any stretch of the imagination. It was perhaps the stupid and cruelest way to get what he wanted, and he probably won't get what he wants anyway. So it's really, I'm not defending it, okay, but I'm also just saying that this has a lot of the signs of a propaganda war, at least from the chart. Mars is passing through India, and there may be some violence in eastern India over territory, perhaps with China. I don't think it's going to be major violence, but there will be some violence, and maybe with Bangladesh. And if we go over to, there's a Venus line running through China, so China is experiencing some inflationary pressure itself, but it's at least showing some progress in getting medicines out to the people. That's one positive thing. And Cambodia and Vietnam are also experiencing that. Interestingly enough, for the first time last week, Kim Jong-un actually came out and recognized that there was a COVID outbreak in North Korea. So he's actually understating it. As Sun Rahu conjunction indicates, he's actually understating the severity of it. And let's see now. So Korea's over here, and also Japan is in a little bit of financial flux right now. There'll be a government scandal in Japan within the next 6 months. Mercury is passing over Eastern Australia, and also close to Borneo. But this particular line, this Rahu Sun line, indicates there will be some government scandal in Australia over the next few months. There is a Mars line passing over New Zealand. New Zealand has been sort of protected from COVID just because of how remote it is from everywhere and how far people live apart from each other. I think you'll see some minor COVID outbreaks this summer, and also some hello.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Gary, hi. It's Mary Serpentini.
Oh, hi, Marie. How are you doing?
I'm good. Listen, I hate to bother you, but I've got two of my kids and my ex-husband pressuring me to sell the house, and it's such a huge decision to make. And
Can I call you back, Marie? I'm in the middle of something right now.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
And okay, so I hope that you're going to go back to the screen. That's not the share. Go back to the share. And I apologize. I'm going to I don't think I can get rid of that. But I think what you'll see is so let's talk about COVID for a second, because that's something that a lot of people are worried about. There's fear of an outbreak in the fall. I think we're going to see most of the outbreaks in the summer, and it'll dissipate by the fall. And that's mainly because of Saturn moving back into Capricorn. I don't think it's going to really be that major an issue, be gone completely by next January. So my apologies for the interruption. And let me just go back here. So let's go back to the actual chart itself. I'm going to stop this and then shrink this down and get rid of this, and then stop the sharing. So again, economically, and I've said this before, we're headed into a recession. I think it's going to be a short-term recession, probably lasting about 2 quarters, just enough to qualify as a recession. And a lot of it will be due to supply shortfalls and pressure by the federal government. I don't personally agree with what the federal government is doing in terms of lowering interest rates. I think that's really not a good idea. Or excuse me, increasing interest rates. I don't think that's a really great idea. But it's what they do, is how they react, and that's so that's the problem. If we could increase supply chains, that would address the problem. But I don't think you'll see that addressed really until the start of early next year, and the inflation will probably continue. Hope and Royal will continue into 2024. So at least early 2023. And let's see now. I don't think it's a catastrophic inflation. I don't think it's anywhere near what people were experiencing in Weimar Germany. Weimar Germany was just outrageous. If you look at Weimar Germany, you'll see the extent to which the inflation was. And certain South American countries have experienced that as well. So this is not, we're not talking about that, but it will be a problem worldwide. It won't be a problem just in the United States. So let's get back to the individual signs. So for Aries, and I'll wrap this up for this week. For Aries is going to be a little bit dissatisfied with his life, but it will have more money and more financial success. Relationship life will seem a little bit challenging, and relationship partners will be sad and difficult, but work life will be good. And financial gains will be somewhat good. For Taurus has actually a good week coming up. They have Venus and Jupiter in the 11th house, and as Lord of the 8th house, so unexpected gains coming in, and a lot of financial success, but communications are a little bit flawed, especially communications with the relationship partners. And relationship partners will be very tough to please. For children will be a little bit stubborn, but that will pass within about 3 weeks, by early June. For Gemini has his Lord is in the 12th house, so this indicates this sign will be engaged in publicity, will be engaged in trying to promote themselves, and largely successful. Would be a good time to promote themselves because Jupiter and Venus, special planets for Gemini, are in the 10th house. So this is a good career time for Gemini, rising or suns. And the main problems they'll have are with children, and they may feel a little bit depressed, or there may be problems to mother's health. Mars is in the 9th house, they'll be a little bit overly perfectionistic. I'll be a little bit too concerned about whether or not it's the right time to do things, but overall, the sign will do well. For Cancer, Cancer has no planets in the seventh house, which is a relief. They'll come back and get relationship problems in early July, but not right now. And relationship partners will seem a little bit difficult to please, though, but their luck is very good. Cancer's luck is very good. And there is an increase in fame over the next few months. And Sun is in their 11th house, so they'll have new friends and even friends from the past coming back in. K2 will give them a lot of courage. But Moon and Scorpio, Moon and Scorpio, the Lord of the first house, in the 5th house, not a bad placement, but they'll feel a little bit down. They'll need a lot of help from friends around them over this month. For Leo, Leo has Sun in the 10th house, so career life will be front and center for the sign. Friendships will be a little bit difficult. And I think overall from the chart, you have good placements for courage, for new dreams, but again, a little bit of emotional uncertainty about whether or not you're taking the right direction. Don't worry about it, you are. Mars and Saturn are in the 7th house, so that's going to make it seem like relationship partners are difficult, really horrible, horribly picky. Not horrible people, but horribly picky. And Jupiter and Venus in the 8th house, you'll get residuals or payments for things you weren't expecting. Rahu's in the 9th house, good for promotion, but you have to keep on top of that promotion because you can't just sit on your laurels. You'll have to actually produce things. And you'll also get help from your relationship partners or your boyfriends or business partners. Sun is in the 10th house, so very good for career, as we said before. Good for money, too. For Virgo, K2's in the 2nd house, so communications may be a little bit garbled or misunderstood. Moon is in the 3rd house, and that particular placement is actually good for trying new projects or new ideas. There's a full moon right now, so a lot of ideas are coming to fruition for you. That's a good thing. And Mars and Saturn are in the 6th house, so there may be some minor aches or pains in the body. Jupiter and Venus are in the 7th house, so a lot of people will find this sign very attractive, very personal, very easy to get along with. So it's a good time to go out and meet people if you're single, for Virgo. Rahu's in the 8th house, so again, expected gains won't come. There'll be delays in getting gains or dissatisfaction in those. Sun is in the 9th house, so that's good for health, that's good for vitality, and good for communications. And the Lord of the first being in the 9th is always good for luck. Venus ruled Libra is focused on work. It'll put a lot of attention on work over the next 10 days, and then a lot of focus on building relationships the month after that. But it's also going to be good for overcoming enemies and overcoming obstacles. It's time for a change for Libra. It'll feel a little bit difficult at first, and the sign will probably feel like it's really difficult to make money, but if they persevere, they definitely will. And Moon being in the 2nd house, it'll seem a little bit pessimistic or a little bit downhearted. Sun's in the 8th house, some good gains from the government, although you may have some taxes sought from the government as well. And the 8th house lord, the 8th house ruler, the 8th house, the 9th house lord in the 8th house gives a lot of interest in learning about occult or metaphysical or hidden subjects. For Scorpio, Scorpio has Moon in the 1st house. Oh boy, so that's kind of negative. But basically, if this sign can just buck itself up, do mantras to Gauri, Om Shri Gauri Namaha, That'll be good for strengthening the moon, or even mantras to the moon like Om Chandramase Namaha, or Om Shri Chandraya Namaha. So my favorite is Om Chandramase Namaha, because it's relatively easy to pronounce and it's a direct mantra to the moon. So that'll help strengthen luck in the chart if you do those mantras. Also, if you want to wear pearl or opaque white stones, that's a good idea. Saturn aspects this sign, so it's what's called a Kantaka Shani, and that is Saturn's in the fourth house from the moon. So it's also good to do some of the rituals I recommended for Saturn. That is prayers to Hanuman, dumping some wheat, some puffed wheat. I'm sorry, dumping some nails, black dowel, mustard seed oil, and mixing it up in a bag and giving it to a river, putting it in a river, and black cloth, excuse me, and you put some black cloth in the bag, and give it to a river about an hour before sunset on a Saturday, and that should help with Saturn problems. You have Mars with Saturn, which should counteract that combination to a certain extent, but Saturn's aspecting the moon. That's what I'm more concerned about. Venus and Jupiter in the fifth house, good opportunity for romantic involvements. This sign will be really strongly focused on relationship life this month, but I would encourage them to wait for about another couple of months before I engage in anything serious. And finally, career-wise, let me get this large box out of the sky here. Can't quite do it. All right. Second. Where is it? Where is it? Sorry. And only have a few minutes left. Sagittarius has, so those rituals are recommended for Scorpio rising, Taurus rising, and or Taurus sun, Scorpio sun, and also Aquarius sun, moon rising. For Sagittarius, a lot of courage for the sign, a lot of goodwill in the family, some minor health issues. Children are tough to please, but K2 looks pretty good in the 11th house. He fulfills ambitions. Moon in the 12th, again, like I said, a little bit depressing, but not really a long-term issue. For Capricorn, you have Venus and Jupiter in the third house, so the sign will seem to be very people-pleasing, very apologetic. Mars and Saturn are in the second house. That's good for aggressively pursuing your goals. Rahu's in the fourth. So some problems in terms of property or personal possessions. Sun and Mercury are in the fifth house, so children will seem to be stubborn or intransigent. K2's in the 10th house. Not a lot of recognition work-wise, but this sign really doesn't need it as long as it makes money. And Moon is in the 12th house, so be worried about making financial gains. But overall, it's not a bad week for Capricorn. For Aquarius, the Lord of the first house is in the first house, so this sign will seem to be very dominant, very leadership-oriented. Venus, Jupiter are in the second house. That's very good for financial gains. Sun and Mercury are in the fourth house. Although a lot of focus on home life, work's finally getting done on home life, but not finally done, and probably until around the second week in June. And seventh house Lord is the Sun, so this person will hear from people, relationship partners from the past as well. K2's in the ninth house, good overall for religious or spiritual activity, and moves in the 10th house, so career is a little bit disappointing right now. Finally, for Pisces, Pisces has this marvelous combination of Venus and Jupiter in the first house, and Mars and Saturn in the 12th. So I think this particular sign will have good luck with children, good luck with ambitions, and good luck with career, but not good luck with bosses. So that's it for this week. I gotta go. Namaste. I love you all. And thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye now. See you next week.